Can you imagine over 900 people willingly drinking cyanide-laced Flavor Aid? It's almost beyond comprehension, yet it happened. That's exactly what happened on November 18, 1978, in a remote jungle settlement called Jonestown, Guyana. This isolated community became the site of one of the most tragic events in modern history. This horrific event, orchestrated by a charismatic yet deeply disturbed leader named Jim Jones, sent shockwaves across the globe. His influence over his followers was both profound and terrifying. It remains one of the most baffling cases of mass suicide in history. The sheer scale and the methodical nature of the event continue to haunt us. How could one man hold such sway over his followers, leading them to their deaths? The answer is complex and deeply unsettling. The answer lies in a complex web of manipulation, fear, and a desperate longing for a better world. Jones preyed on these vulnerabilities with chilling precision. The Jonestown Massacre stands as a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. It shows how absolute control can lead to absolute devastation. It also highlights the vulnerability of individuals seeking solace and belonging in the face of charismatic leadership. The need for community can sometimes blind us to the dangers lurking within. The story of Jonestown is a cautionary tale for us all. It warns us of the perils of blind faith and the importance of vigilance. It serves as a stark reminder of the importance of critical thinking, questioning authority, and valuing individual freedom. In the end, our ability to think for ourselves is our greatest defense against such tragedies. Born in rural Indiana in 1931, James Warren Jones craved attention and recognition from a young age. He was a peculiar child, fascinated by death and religion. Jones possessed an uncanny ability to charm and manipulate people. This talent became increasingly evident as he grew older. He found his calling in preaching, establishing his own church in Indianapolis in the 1950s. Jones's message of racial equality and social justice resonated with a diverse following. However, beneath his charismatic facade lurked a darker side. Jones's thirst for power and control soon became apparent. He began to demand absolute obedience from his congregation. This marked the beginning of a dangerous trajectory. It ultimately led to the tragedy in Jonestown. Jones's church, the People's Temple, grew rapidly during the 1960s. His message of social justice attracted a diverse following. It included many African Americans and other marginalized groups seeking a sense of belonging and hope. However, Jones's increasingly erratic behavior and apocalyptic warnings raised concerns. He spoke of impending nuclear war and societal collapse. Fearing persecution and seeking to create his own utopian society, Jones moved his followers to a remote settlement in Guyana, South America, in the 1970s. This settlement, christened Jonestown, promised a life free from external threats, but it would soon become a prison of fear and despair. The move to Jonestown marked a turning point in the People's Temple story. What started as a dream of a better life soon morphed into a nightmare. Jones's paranoia and need for control intensified in the isolated jungle. This made Jonestown a breeding ground for fear and oppression. Life in Jonestown was far from the idyllic existence Jones had promised. Followers endured harsh living conditions, working long hours in the fields under the sweltering tropical sun. Jones's once inspiring message transformed into a paranoid rant. He preached about enemies all around and the need for absolute loyalty. He exerted total control over every aspect of their lives. This included their finances, relationships, and even their thoughts. Dissent was not tolerated. Punishments were swift and brutal. Public beatings and imprisonment in a tiny wooden box were common occurrences. Fear permeated every aspect of life in Jonestown. This fear kept the residents trapped in a web of obedience and despair. The utopia Jones promised had devolved into a living hell, with him as its ruthless dictator. Section 5. The Congressman's Visit. A Glimmer of Hope Extinguished. In 1978, concerned relatives of Jonestown residents alerted Congressman Leo Ryan of California about the troubling conditions in Jonestown. Ryan decided to investigate these claims. He embarked on a fact-finding mission to the settlement, accompanied by a group of journalists and concerned family members. At first, Jones presented a carefully constructed facade of normalcy and contentment. However, as Ryan spent more time in Jonestown, cracks began to appear. Several residents secretly expressed their desire to leave. They passed notes to the Congressman's party. This signaled their desperation to escape Jones's suffocating grip. Ryan's visit offered a glimmer of hope for those who had been trapped. It was a brief window of opportunity, but this window would soon be shattered by Jones's paranoia and violence. Section 6, November 18, 1978, the day the music died. This date would forever be etched in history as a day of unimaginable tragedy and loss. Fearful of losing control, Jones orchestrated a terrifying plan. His paranoia and desperation reached a fever pitch, leading him to make a decision that would have catastrophic consequences. As Ryan and his group prepared to leave with the defectors, Jones's security guards opened fire. The air was filled with chaos and panic as bullets flew. They killed Ryan, 3 journalists, and one of the defectors. The violence was swift and brutal, leaving no room for escape. This horrific act of violence marked the beginning of the end for Jonestown. The community that once sought utopia was now spiraling into a nightmare. Later that same day, Jones assembled his followers. The atmosphere was tense and filled with dread. He told them the outside world would torture them for the killings. His words were filled with fear and manipulation, designed to control and coerce. He presented only one horrifying solution: mass suicide. The followers, gripped by fear and loyalty, listened in stunned silence. Under the watchful eyes of Jones's armed guards, over 900 people, including hundreds of children, were forced to drink cyanide-laced flavor aid. The guards ensured compliance, leaving no room for dissent. This concoction was falsely reported as Kool-Aid in the initial news reports. The tragic misreporting added to the confusion and horror of the event. The scene was one of unimaginable horror. Bodies lay strewn across the ground, a grim testament to the tragedy that had unfolded. Parents administered the poison to their own children before consuming it themselves. The heartbreak and despair were palpable. The air was filled with cries of anguish and the stench of death. The once vibrant community was now a scene of utter devastation. This gruesome event shocked the world and left an indelible mark on history. The legacy of Jonestown serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers of blind obedience and the tragic consequences of unchecked power. Section 7. Echoes of Jonestown, a world in shock. The news of the Jonestown Massacre sent shockwaves across the globe. The world struggled to comprehend how such a tragedy could occur. People grappled with the horrifying reality of a charismatic leader leading his followers to mass suicide. The event raised countless questions about the nature of cults, the dangers of blind obedience, and the responsibility of individuals to question authority. The Jonestown Massacre became a defining moment in history. It served as a chilling reminder of the power of manipulation and the fragility of human life. Section 8. The Legacy of a Tragedy Never Again. The Jonestown Massacre stands as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the allure of charismatic leaders. It highlights the importance of critical thinking, questioning authority, and fostering open dialogue. The tragedy serves as a grim reminder that even in the pursuit of utopia, we must remain vigilant against those who seek to exploit our vulnerabilities and strip us of our free will. The legacy of Jonestown lives on. It compels us to learn from the past and work towards a future where such tragedies are never repeated. Section 9. Unmasking the Cult Mentality, a Call for Vigilance. The Jonestown Massacre offers crucial lessons about the dangers of cult mentality. It serves as a grim reminder of how easily people can be manipulated and led astray by charismatic leaders who exploit their vulnerabilities. Cults thrive on isolation, fear, and the suppression of individuality. They create environments where questioning and dissent are not tolerated, and where members are made to feel dependent on the group for their survival and identity. Jim Jones meticulously crafted an environment where his followers were cut off from the outside world, subjected to constant fear-mongering, and stripped of their critical thinking abilities. This manipulation was systematic and deliberate, designed to break down their sense of self and make them more malleable. This created a breeding ground for blind obedience, and ultimately led to the horrific tragedy. The loss of over 900 lives in Jonestown is a stark testament to the destructive power of unchecked authority and blind faith. It is our responsibility to educate ourselves and others about the dangers of cult mentality. By learning about the psychological tactics used by cult leaders, we can better protect ourselves and our communities. We must remain vigilant in recognizing the warning signs: charismatic leadership, isolation from the outside world, information control, and suppression of dissent. These are red flags that should never be ignored. By understanding the tactics used by cult leaders, we can empower ourselves and others to resist their manipulation. Knowledge is our best defense against those who seek to control and exploit us. This will help prevent future tragedies. We must honor the memory of those who perished by ensuring that such a catastrophe never happens again. Let Jonestown serve as a stark reminder that freedom of thought, critical thinking, and open dialogue are essential for a just and compassionate society. These values are the bedrock of a healthy community and must be fiercely protected.